let's see. Last week coffee was bad for you. This week I think it's good for you. And a growing cancer concern. Good morning to the Fox Medical team's Dr. Joette Giovinco. So let's start with cervical cancer in women, and some disturbing new numbers are out.
There really are. Good morning, yes. And so what these researchers wanted to do is they wanted to see the number of death, or the death rate of the cervical cancer. So they changed the bottom number, or the denominator. So if you think about this, when you look at a rate, say you have two people, one person gets cancer, that's a 50% cancer rate, right? So that's really, really high. But if you have 100 women and one person gets cancer, now you're talking about maybe 1%. Okay, so what they did with these cervical cancer patients is they eliminated from that bottom number, they eliminated women who had a hysterectomy, who didn't have a cervix, who couldn't get cervical cancer. When they did that, it really unveiled a problem, because when they looked at black women, that number almost doubled, that rate almost doubled. When they looked at white women, it went up 50%. So they're saying we have been underestimating that death rate in women, especially older women, because some of these deaths, or many of these deaths, were occurring after they were no longer even screened, after the age of 65.
Right, and so what we're really talking about is, unfortunately, a lot of these are preventable if they're caught early. That's the challenge.
Absolutely, they are preventable, and so part of the reason is not picking them up, not perhaps maybe we need to relook at screening and when and how we should screen, but in addition to that, there was a little bit of a healthcare disparity when they looked at the treatment that was received in some of these minority groups. They were less likely to get radiation, surgery, and then the other problem was more black women get hysterectomies. Why? Well, because they have fibroids more often, so that's, sometimes they undergo those hysterectomies for benign reasons, of course. So that really, I think those two things contributed to these more alarming numbers in those women.
Let's talk about caffeine, because I'm on my 2.5 cup right now, and you got some good news about caffeine, whether it comes from coffee or elsewhere.
I do. Right? I do, and this is actually great news. And what they're looking at is in heart patients. For years and years and years, we would tell our heart patients, especially our heart rhythm patients, don't drink any coffee, don't drink any caffeine. You worry about the heart failure people and going into an arrhythmia. But there are a few studies that have just come out, really, that are kind of contradicting that premise. And one of them very recently looked at the fact that caffeine seemed to block a protein, an inflammatory protein, that increased the risk of stiffness in the arteries and also blood pressure. There have also been studies that looked at a decreased risk of developing heart failure in those individuals who drank 3 to 4 cups. And there was another study that directly administered caffeine, 500 milligrams over 5 hours, to patients with heart failure and rhythm problems. It did not cause them to go into an arrhythmia. Now again, we are talking about coffee, we are talking about tea, and we're not talking about coffee with lots of pumps of, whatever your favorite flavor is, with lots of sugar. But on the contrasting side, energy drinks, we're not incorporating that into this, because energy drinks also contain other chemicals that can really affect the heart. And in fact, there were adolescents who developed atrial fibrillation. We usually associate AFib with older adults after drinking energy drinks. So there are other things, other chemicals in those that would not be recommended. In addition to that, we're talking about supplements, or perhaps maybe powders could be really dangerous. We've seen deaths with people overdosing on those things. And I think lastly, it's really important to tell any heart patient out there, there is hope for you if you've been told you can't drink any coffee, but it's really best to talk to your doctor, can interact with medications perhaps. There's also the worry about anxiety. It may exacerbate anxiety. So there may be other effects with that caffeine that maybe would make it not right for you, but the rest of us, yay, can keep drinking our coffee.
Absolutely, great news. Dr. Joe, thanks as always. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.